G'day folks, Jeff here with my favourite releases by Relapse Records. Welcome to the next video in my series of my favourite record labels. Today we're looking at Relapse Records from America. They were formed in Pennsylvania by Matt Jacobson and then very rapidly after by Bill Yurkovitz, who had his own label that was merged with Relapse. Yeah, this will be a lot longer than my Peaceful one because Relapse have a ton of records they've put out over the years, a ton of different bands. So yeah, this is my top 30. I could probably have done a top 50 reasonably easily, and there's a few notable ones missing out, but well, got to stop somewhere. I've always been a big fan of Relapse Records since they first put out some horrible death metal and grind sort of stuff. I used to get their mail order catalogues in the mail, and I have fond memories of dialing International, which at the time, this is pre-internet of course, at the time dialing International was not cheap, so I remember ringing them up to do orders, which was a little surreal, ringing someone on the other side of the world to go, have you got this Disembowelment shirt in extra large? So yeah, that was enjoyable times. I got plenty of good stuff out of Relapse over the years, and yeah, I always loved getting their mail orders. It's always a bit painful looking at all the fun stuff that I couldn't quite afford all of, but oh well. For a time in their early days, they were, I think, a distributor of Nuclear Blast Records in America, so they have a few sort of crossover ones that I'm probably not going to include in this one, including they put out 7 inches of albums, so these two masterpieces, Macabre and Afflicted, are not going to be on this list because they put out the full albums with Nuclear Blast, so if I ever get around to doing a Nuclear Blast list, there's a spoiler for a couple of the bands that'll be on that, no doubt. Yeah, they continued for, I think, I don't know, a good 6 years at least with Nuclear Blast. There's a ton of reissues, like one of the albums here is actually, for some reason, only released on vinyl by Nuclear Blast, not Relapse, but oh well. Relapse is still going strong to this day, getting an ever-expanding repertoire, including black metal, shoegaze, all sorts of stuff, veering from their original days of sort of death grind and sludge sort of stuff, so still going strong, which is good. But as I'm an old geezer, most of these are like 20 plus years old, of course. But yeah, as I said, there's still some great stuff coming out. But yeah, most of this is ancient, you could say. In my usual manner, there'll only be one album per artist on this, and I'm also not doing reissues. You know, they put out the first 2 Blood Duster releases on a compilation, which doesn't quite count. And also this absolute masterpiece. They put out this CD, which is bloody excellent. It's got all these extra tracks, but they didn't put it out first, so sorry. No Repulsion, or Dead Horse, or Death, or all the other great reissues that they've done. So before we get to the list proper, I'll just talk about some of their great compilations that they've done over the years. I think Corporate Death was the first one that I heard. It's first place I heard, like Mortician, AC, Dead World. That was quite the eye-opener, as you'd imagine. Not long after, there was this one which I think they put out, and so did Nuclear Blast. So there's a heap of bands from both of their ones, but this is where I first heard Enemy Soil, Mind Rot, Human Remains, a ton of great bands. Further down the track was this Solid one, which I think was like 98 or 99, and that's a ton of great of their slightly later bands like Nile, Agoraphobic Nosebleed, Hemdale. It's got an exclusive track on here, so yeah, that was quite the eye-opener. And another of my favourites that we used to play on the radio a heap was Contaminated, which had a killer Cephalic Carnage song that we used to play all the time that I'm not sure if it's actually available on other versions. It's got this ridiculously loud bass peak that we used to just it used to sound so good in the studio. No idea how it sounded on AM radio, but in the studio on good monitors it sounded killer. So yeah, some great stuff on that, including, might have been the first time I heard Dillinger Escape Plan. So yeah, they've done some great compilations over the years, including this one, which I'm pretty sure they got in trouble for doing because it's kind of a Slayer logo. Not that exciting a compilation. I mean, it's got some great stuff on there, but yeah, I think they got in trouble for the cover art, so I don't think you can get that one anymore. They also did a couple of location-based compilations. So they did Dutch Assault, which is probably got my favourite Last Days of Humanity tracks on it, as well as cool SMES and Brutal Inhume stuff. There was a Japanese one as well, which has got Realised and maybe Senseless Apocalypse and really cool sort of hardcore band Muga, who I never really heard of much else of. They also did Check Assault, which has Contrastic Stuff and Negligent Collateral Collapse, as well as Interval Bazaar. Unfortunately, the Contrastic Stuff on this isn't quite as good as their self-titled album, but NCC stuff rules as always. They also did a Polish one and a Brazilian one, neither of which I've heard because, yeah, those artists didn't really quite grab me. I always thought they should have done an Australian one. I've no idea why they didn't. I mean, they got several Australian bands on the bill, or, on their roster, Disembowelment, Alchemist, Bloodduster, but, they could have had a great one with, like, Fuck 'Em Dead, Captain Cleanoff, Misery, Sad X, heaps of stuff they could have put on there, so not sure why that never happened. Maybe these didn't sell very well, but yeah, these three ones I very much appreciate. Alright, on to the proper list. First up at number 30 is Exhumed with Gore Metal. I just have to show off my pretty picture disc, even though it actually came out on Morbid Records, but originally it was on Relapse, so it's good enough. These blokes were, well, still are, pretty raw death metal, great stuff. They always get compared to Carcass for some reason, but it's only really, the gory theme maybe, but I think it's more the vocal trade-off, sort of high and low. It does sound a bit like early Carcass, but musically, I don't think they sound that similar, really. It's just raw quality American death metal. It's great stuff. Chainsaw on the cover is very fitting for the guitar tone on this one. It's, rusty. Favourite songs are probably Open the Abscess and the chorus from Limb for Limb is bloody awesome. I've seen these guys a number of times with the highlight. They toured Australia in, I think, 2004 or somewhere around there. They played Canberra, which was cool, but they also did a harbour cruise on Sydney Harbour in a small ferry, which was great time. I mean, they ruled, they played with good bands, but it was just awesome seeing probably 40 or 50 headbangers just on a ferry rocking around, and you see everyone swaying left and right. And I do recall at one stage the lead guitarist, I think Mike, was out on the deck just playing solos at passing yachts. The looks from the passerbys that are probably, not really used to a ferry full of metalheads just standing there headbanging. It was priceless. Really good fun. Okay, number 29 is Exit 13 with Ethos Music. This is a band that featured Bill Yerkovitz, one of the main guys from Relapse, so they obviously got themselves a record deal pretty easily. They played sort of weird grind with an environmental sort of theme. Very strange. The earlier stuff was actually, earlier album and EPs was also released on Relapse on this compilation called Don't Spare the Green Love, which I believe there's now a even bigger compilation that Relapse put out that just has everything on it pretty much. They later on did an album called Smoking Songs. It was kind of like smooth jazz, but songs about marijuana, like old songs about marijuana. That was a slightly odd thing, but anyway. But this is pretty pure sort of grind, with some lengthy samples at times. But yeah, great sense of humour as well. This is a much thicker sound than their earlier stuff, which I always appreciated. And for this, they had a changing lineup over the years, and this one had Danny Luca on bass and Scott Lewis from first Brutal Truth album or two on drums as well, so it was a worthy addition. Half of it's sort of old songs like Societally Provoked Genocidal Contemplation. Sorry, I had to read that one. My Mind's Mind and good old Disemboweling Party, which is always a classic. But yeah, I think one of the newer songs, Open Season on Hunter Slaughter, was probably my favourite on there. It's just great sort of band, had lots of weird little mellow interludes and then back into growling and screaming and fast drumming. Great stuff. Number 28 is Flesh Parade with Kill Whitey. I love that album cover. These guys were, I think they were from Louisiana, a grind band, sort of catchy grind, sort of like Captain Cleanoff style. They just had a real sort of rolling groove to them. They were great quality, mostly frantic sort of screamed vocals. This CD actually has the Kill Whitey 7-inch, which came out originally on record, obviously, as well as a 93 and 94 demo. They changed singers after this for their second album, Dirty Sweet, which was bloody good as well. I got lucky to see these guys at MDF one year. I was sort of expecting him to be pretty good. I think it was with the other singer, not this guy. I was expecting them to be good, but they were great. Just, I don't know, it was just really fun, enjoyable grind. Wasn't, it was fast and nasty screaming stuff, but just that extra groove to it really adds to it. Great band. Number 27 is Stinkin' Up the Night by Death Breath. This is probably the newest album on here, 2006 or something like that. This is Nicky Anderson from Entombed and Helicopters fame. This is his sort of return to death metal. I think it was probably just a mucking around fun sort of project for him, but yeah, continued on. So far has released an album and an EP or two, and I believe there's a new track out now or out very soon, so keep an eye out for that. This is very much just Swedish death metal, great sort of stuff. They got sort of guest vocals from Fred Espy from Dismember, Scott Carlson from Repulsion, and good old Jorgen Sandstrom from Grave, and what's his other band, Project Hate. Yeah, he's probably my favourite of the vocalists, because yeah, his vocals are just monstrous, as always. Unsurprisingly, the Scott Carlson songs sound quite a bit like Repulsion, I've got to say. This really is a combination of sort of Entombed, Autopsy and Repulsion, so all fine by me. Dragged Through the Mud is just total Autopsy worship, which never goes astray with me. I think there should be a lot more Autopsy worship bands out there. But yeah, it's just great fun Swedish death metal. Very much enjoyable. Number 26 is Remission by Mastodon. This is probably one of their bigger bands over the years. I've never been quite sure how to categorise these guys. Sludge metal, maybe? Well, back then they probably were. This is my preferred one because it's a bit heavier than their latter ones. I got suckered in by this band by the connection to Lethargy, which was always this mythical sort of band that I don't think I'd even heard by the time I heard Mastodon, but I'd heard they were great. So, yeah, their Lifeblood EP before this, yeah, it was pretty good, but this album certainly sold me. Just the start of that March of the Fire Ants. That's, yeah, I much prefer this because his vocals are a bit gruffer on here as well. I mean, nothing too wrong with the later albums, but yeah, this one is where it's at for me. And Bran, the drummer, is just a maniac on here, just rolls everywhere. Very busy boy. I did luck out. I've seen these guys a few times, including supporting Slayer. That was pretty cool, but the best one was when my dear wife and I were in Chicago and we saw them at, I think it's Riviera Theatre, which is this old, very old, proper theatre with an upstairs, and, you'd be seeing plays or all sorts of stuff, and then suddenly there's Mastodon playing there with, I can never remember, it was like some hardcore sort of band like Terror or something or other. The gig was pretty much sold out, but we just sort of rocked up on a whim because we just happened to be in America for a trip, and the security guard said, well, if you buy some merch you can get in. So I was like, okay, I was going to buy a t-shirt anyway. So, and yeah, it was really great. It's just kind of bizarre. We were sitting upstairs in this nice seated area, this waitress wandering around with drinks and stuff. It was a little surreal, and then sort of looked down and there's this gigantic mosh pit and this slowly dilapidated old theatre. Great fun. Number 25 is Monastat 7 with Now Available Without a Prescription. This is a very weird band. It's a sort of a drum machine grind band kind of merged with Primus, so it's got weird nasally vocals and sort of, I wouldn't say prominent bass, but a very clean sound when they're not doing heavy. It's very weird sort of stuff, but insanely programmed drums, which just, I always love it when bands with drum machines just go beyond what's possible. This is just odd. It's produced by Danny Lilker for some reason. These guys are from Buffalo. I don't think they really did a huge amount else other than maybe a demo before this. That I'm pretty sure I have a feeling I listened to a release of theirs in a store once, and it was just terrible. But yeah, anyway, this album rules. It's very quirky and weird sort of humour. It's got some odd samples, and yeah, I don't know if it's a theme song of In the Land of the Lost, but yeah, it's very odd stuff. But amusingly, amusing story, I do own a long sleeve t-shirt of that album cover, which on the back has, I'll get it up, it's got charming instructions on, basically, that probably doesn't come out very well, but Monastat 7's a yeast infection cream, you could say. So there's, on the inside of this, and also on my t-shirt, is instructions on how to apply it for the ladies out there. So when I was blithely wearing this t-shirt once in a music shop, I was just there browsing CDs, and I hear this woman behind me saying, obviously loud voice, you know, obviously directed at me, oh, maybe I'll get a shirt for bowel cancer. And I wisely didn't turn around, and somehow managed to stifle my laughter. But yeah, didn't wear that shirt too much else. But yeah, very quirky. This is one of the very unknown sort of bands of Relapse that I never hear a single person ever talking about, but I've always loved it. I like quirky, weird sort of stuff. So yeah, very much a winner. Number 24 is Skinless with Foreshadowing Our Demise. These guys are a New York sort of death metal band. Sort of brutal, but not really full brutal, you know, nasty Devourment sort of style. But a bit heavier than usual. But a really fun band. Their first two albums, Progression Towards Evil, I think it's called, or something like that. And this one are just killer. After that, they got a bit average. There's just something fun and groovy about these guys. They got very silly samples, but the music itself's still, you know, great, serious sort of stuff. Really good vocal range, but live, I've seen them twice. First time was at the Final Metal for the Brain, which is a big metal festival in Canberra in Australia. That was a killer festival over many years. I went to all of them. But it was the later version of Skinless where it wasn't the main singer, Sherwood, and I think maybe the different drummer or something or other, and they were just a bit shit. But I saw them at MDF 1 year later, a couple of years later, and they had Sherwood back in. I think I don't know if it was supposed to be their last gig ever or something like that, but yeah, I could see why everyone had talked about how much of a great singer he was, because live they were just ridiculous. Because they'd been average at Metal for the Brain, I'd only planned on half watching them and half watching, I think Orange Goblin were on at the same time. But Orange Goblin got no action because they pretty much just played this and the first album. And I don't know, there was something about it. It was so much fun. The guy was all over the place. The crowd were totally into it. I mean, an American band playing to an American crowd there that they've probably played to a number of times before. But yeah, there's just something about him. He was a great singer. So yeah. Favourite song on this is probably, I think it's Merry Melody, but Enslavement is just ridiculously heavy riff in it. But yeah, all over, kick ass. So this is the first album. I wouldn't really bother with the later ones, although I can't say I've heard the last couple, but yeah, this album rules. Number 23 is Candiru with Unloved and Weeded Out. These guys are a strange sort of industrial band. They're on the sub-label that Relapse have. Well, I don't know if they still have it, but they had, called Release Records. Put out all sorts of weird stuff, including Merzbow and yeah, a ton of stuff. So these guys are sort of industrial metal. It's a bit hit and miss. There's some really great songs on there. They use this on the good songs. They use this weird clanging sort of sound that gives it that, you know, proper industrial Neubauten-y sort of sound. But yeah, it's still pretty much just industrial metal sort of stuff, but yeah, very enjoyable. I love songs Poison and Mouth and Angles, and it's got this EP as well that they put out at the end with Tranced and Trampled and Hammer, which are both great songs as well. So yeah, I've been a fan of these guys for a while. I remember hearing someone a road trip down to Melbourne. My good mate Andy played us some, and I think that's where I got suckered in by that clanging noise that just works very effectively. This is another amusing band shirt story. I still have a long sleeve of that, and on the side, on one of the sleeves, it's got explanation of what a Candiru is. It's a fish in South America that supposedly swims up your urethra. So I'm not sure if this is a fact or one of those urban legends, but at any rate, people have to wrap themselves quite well before swimming around Candiru. And essentially that was what was explained on the sleeve in this big chunk of text, which was a bit weird to put on the sleeve of your metal shirt, but anyway. And I remember catching a plane and some guy I just noticed after a while he was just reading my arm, and he just looked up and went, "Oh, that's interesting sort of stuff." But yeah, another slightly odd sort of band. I don't think they did much else. I did see a sort of like a best of or a unreleased kind of thing that they put out themselves not that long ago, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much their only proper album. But yeah, good industrial metal. Number 22 is Gore Necropsy with Noise A Go-Go. This is just ridiculously raw, over-the-top Japanese grind. Been a big fan of these guys since their I Recommend You Amputation demo, which I heard back in the day. They've sort of changed from most of their time they were actually a proper band with a proper drummer, but the first couple of releases had a drum machine. I'm actually a big fan of their Split With Gut. It's probably my favourite of their releases, but after that they just went straight grind, and the songs on this are ridiculously over the top. Most of them are like 20 seconds long, if that. There's all sorts of weird samples on here, and this is the second one to sample Divine. I think Skinless also sampled some, probably Pink Flamingos or some other Divine movie of some variety. So we used to play Gore Beyond on the radio all the time. Just usually played about like 6 songs in a row because that only went for about 2 minutes. Yeah, they're very... I was a bit surprised that Relapse actually put this out because it's a bit rawer than the usual stuff. Although maybe Bill Jokovic picked it himself because he did go on after Relapse to form Last House on the right, record label, which mostly just put out ridiculously raw grind. So Go Beyond, they morphed into Noise A Go-Go after a while. And still plays similar sort of stuff. It's just raw as hell, but a bit more kind of Motorheady now. I'm still pissed off I missed their tour of Australia in, I think it was 1997. Well, and by tour I mean they played about 2 or 3 gigs in Melbourne alone, and that's it. I didn't find out until a couple of weeks later, and I was, a bit sad, because I don't think they've actually toured anywhere other than that, so that would have been awesome. Ridiculously over-the-top band. Lots of songs about shit. That seems to be their theme that they go with. And yeah, awesome stuff. Number 19 is a twofer. This is the band Trial of the Bow with their Ornamentation and Rite of Passage. Ornamentation's an EP and Rite's an album. They came out within about 2 years of each other, so I've just combined them because what the hell, I don't think they've done anything since. This is a band that was formed after Disembowelment split up. This is by Renato, who's the main songwriter guy from Disembowelment, and Matt, who's the bass player on the second Disembowelment album, and is still in Inverloch as well. So this is not metal at all. This also was on Relapse Records, the sub-label. There's no distortion whatsoever on this. It's all sort of, Middle Eastern-y, lush percussion sort of stuff. Kind of very inspired, I'd say, by Dead Can Dance and probably bands like Muslim Gores. So yeah, it's lots of tabla and it's very atmospheric, you could say. It's very, very enjoyable. It's kind of weird, but it's Renato used a similar style of vocals on it that I always loved on Your Prophetic Throne of Ivory, the Disembowelment song. Just a weird sort of deep moaning kind of style. But yeah, it's just lush sort of string instruments and dreamy sort of stuff. Definitely recommended. Number 20 is Human 2.0 by Nasum. These guys are a Swedish grind, of course, pretty legendary, and this is their second album. As much as I love the first album, Inhale Exhale, I think the songwriting's just a bit better on this album. It's got the magical 1-2 hit for me of Shadows and then Corrosion, which I was very lucky. I'm very glad they played it live, 1-2 in a row like that as well. Idiot Parade's got a killer breakdown as well, and it's just a bit more varied than Inhale Exhale. As I'm sure you know, unfortunately, the singer Zico, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce his name. Sorry, mate. He passed away in the tsunami in Thailand a while ago. So I never did get to see him live with him, but I did see him live when they toured a sort of farewell tour with the Rotten Sound singer, which was really good. And so, yeah, saw him a few times at, I think, MDF and Sydney as well, at this awful venue. But yeah, they were great live as well. I'll also give props to this EP as well, which they put out. It's a split with a band called War Hate, that I don't think did very much else other than maybe one other EP. They play a sort of black grind almost kind of style. But yeah, Nasum stuff's pretty bloody heavy on that album, I've got to say. So yeah, check them out. Number 19 is Dying Fetus with Destroy the Opposition. This is their, I think, 4th album possibly. It's their first with Relapse, and yeah, just brutal death metal. Super tight. I like the vocal trade-offs on this album a bit more than the later albums. This lineup, I think, were there for the album before that, which I actually kind of prefer, Killing on Adrenaline. But this album is just tight nastiness. I think Pissing in the Mainstream was the song I first heard on one of those compilations that I showed before, and it was, 2 minutes of like, whoa, holy dooly, that's pretty intense. This lineup, unfortunately, pretty much, I think like all 3 of them left except the main guy. The rest left to form, I think, Misery Index actually, but so this is my preferred sort of era, and pretty much the blueprint that they worked out, which really hasn't varied too much, but if you're onto a good thing, why not? I saw these guys at MDF a while back, and it was one of the tightest bands I've seen. It was the 3-piece version, the newer version, but holy dooly, those guys must practice a bit. The drumming on this is just intense as well. It's Kevin Talley, probably at his best. It's nasty. So just raspy, intense death metal. Lots of killer breakdowns. Yeah, just designed to be awesome live, and unsurprisingly, the crowd loved them. So yeah, good stuff. Number 18 is Enemy Soil with Casualties in Progress. These guys are a very frantic grind band. In this era, they used a drum machine and use it very well. This is one of the ones that blew me away from, I think, that Death is Just the Beginning, number 3. I think it was the song Common Ground, which is still a favourite. This is just frantic, killer sort of stuff. Pretty short songs. After this, I think this might have been their last one with a drum machine. They got a proper drummer after this. Went through a number of them. Some of the later stuff I prefer, like the song Direct Action. It's just awesome song. One of their latest splits. Fortunately, they put out a discography a while back on a different label that didn't have this. Was only missing this 7-inch, which I guess Relapse then reissued it on CD as well, so maybe that's why, but it's a bit of a shame. But anyway, killer grind band, really intense sort of stuff, so well worth checking out. Number 17 is Necrology by General Surgery. This is actually one of the pretty early Relapse releases. This is guys from Dismember and Afflicted playing a Carcass cover band, essentially. Even the first song is pretty much just General Grinder from Regal Putrefaction, just rewritten. So, it's very derivative, but obviously they're having a great time. General Surgery is currently still one of my favourite bands. More so their Left Hand Pathology album than this one, but this one is, other than a few demos before this, they pretty much did this and then split up for 15 plus years. But this is just pure Carcass awesome. It's got some pitch shifted vocals that's really effective. I think Crimson Concerto is probably my favourite song on here, but it's just awesome stuff. And look at that cover art. It's bloody awesome. Obviously an old autopsy going on or something or other. Number 16 is Deadworld with The Machine. This is actually band members from the very first release on Relapse, which was Velcro Overdose with their flesh-ripping Sonic Polka. So this sounds quite a bit different. I downloaded that to listen to it and it was a bit shit. But Deadworld's not shit, so yeah, it's super heavy sort of stuff. The first album they had a proper drummer and it didn't quite grab me. This one's got a drum machine, but it's used in a really sort of slow, sinister kind of way. The double bass is super effective. Yeah, it's mostly heavy industrial, quite monotonous, but it's got a sort of sinister kind of almost spoken vocals, which works really well. They did an album after this called Thanatos Descends, which is sort of half noise, but the other half is way heavier than this. It's ridiculously low, sort of deep stuff. But yeah, this is their prime Relapse album, I think. It's just nasty sort of stuff. I love it. Number 15 is Incantation with Onward to Golgotha. This is a legendary death metal album, probably one of the key ones out there. Yeah, super heavy stuff, very dense sort of music. It took me a while to get into it, to tell the truth. I've had CD for donkey's years, but yeah, it took repetitive listenings to really penetrate the whole thing. This is back when they had Craig Pillard on vocals, and yeah, I kind of prefer his style and the later sort of stuff that they use. Really long, drawn-out sort of growls. The second album, Mortal Throne of Nazarene, came very close to this, as did Diabolical Conquest, but yeah, this album just wins it for me. Just, I don't want to use all the cliche incantation sounds or sort of wording that people use, so Cavernous, yes, I still like that one. I think it's quite fitting on this one. Yeah, just thick death metal, can't go wrong. Number 14 is Good Old AC with Morbid Florist. Actually, the band name is pretty much the only offensive thing on this album. This is back in the days where, yeah, they weren't quite as rude as later on, aside from the band name. This is actually back when they sold out and started actually naming songs. All the EPs before this were pretty much just untitled. This one's at least got stuff like Slow Song from the 7-inch and stuff like that. I actually really rate this. I know they're somewhat of a joke sort of band, but I generally rate their songwriting skills at times. They actually know how to write a really killer riff as well. Like this and the first, well, most of their albums really have some great riffs on them. I think they get sort of just thrown into the joke band sort of bucket, but yeah, I've always appreciated some of their stuff. I mean, the heavy slow song number 5 on this is ridiculously nasty sort of stuff. This is back when they were doing the 1-2-1-2 blah, which is always my preferred style of theirs. It's also got their classic song Radio Hit, which is always a winner. I've seen multiple bands cover that over the years. And it's probably their best, most sort of consistent sound as well. Most of these songs were redone for Everyone Should Be Killed, their first album on Earache, but I prefer these versions, to tell the truth. And yeah, it's just awesome stuff. Ridiculous, but so good. And I mean, look at that cover art. It's awesome. Anyway, good old AC. Number 13 is Nile with Amongst the Catacombs of Nephron-Ka. This is their first proper album, I think, and yeah, this blew me away when I first heard it. I think I heard the song Howling of the Djinn on that Solid compilation, and yeah, very sold very instantly. I was very happy to get this in the mail. To me, this is just the prime Nile album. I think they probably improved over the next couple of albums, but this one's just a lot fresher sounding. It's a bit wilder. I really like the 3 different vocalists that they used on it. Peter Moore, I think that's his name. The drummer is just ridiculous on this. But just using the 3 different singers just gives it a bit more variety than just Carl just going the whole time. Plus, this has just got the classic weird bits, the chanting on Howling of the Djinn, the end of Bara Idizadzu, something. I don't know, that slave bit on the German titled song, and also just the percussion tremolo bit on Opening of the Mouth. Wow, that's just gold. This very unique sort of sound that just didn't exist at the time. They've also brought in the classic Holst song Mars Bringer of War on their Ramesses Bringer of War version, which works super well in a death metal sound. It's just, again, their later albums are killer as well. I've still never seen this band live for no apparent reason. They've toured Australia a number of times, just never seen them. But yeah, this album, a breath of fresh air into death metal back in the, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, whenever this came out. It's, killer stuff. Number 12 is Abscess with Seminal Vampires and Maggot Men. Classy album title. This is the spin-off band from Autopsy that they had in between Autopsy being around. Put out a ton of albums really over the years. They're great stuff, but this one's definitely my favourite. It's the most punky of theirs. It's just a great mix of styles. It's not all Chris Ryford singing, which I'm always slightly sad about because he's one of my favourite vocalists, but I've really grown to love Clint, one of the guitarists. His style of sort of very manic screaming on it works very well on some songs. This album's a really good combination of their slow stuff like Mud and Fat Fire, and then the fast stuff with like Gonna Mow You Down and I Don't Give a Fuck. Charming band. And also just catchy stuff like Worms Die Infection and Scent of Shit. Of their latest stuff, they went a bit more death metal, straight death metal after this. Still weird, but a bit less punky after this. But I really do enjoy Damned and Mummified, one of their later albums as well. Sad that I never saw them live. They also did a sort of spin-off band. I suspect the reason why later Abscess was a bit less punky was because they were doing another band called Eat My Fuck that was a charming band. Obviously somewhat Gigi Allen influence, but yeah, Chris growling over punk stuff is just gold. So good old Abscess. I didn't really consider the album before this as an album. It's just like several demos and stuff slapped together, Urine Junkies. But hey, now I can put the album cover up because I've mentioned it, because charming band. I love Abscess, and this album is definitely my favourite. Number 11 is Agoraphobic Nosebleed with Honky Reduction. These guys are super hectic drum machine grind. Insane sort of stuff. Their later stuff doesn't quite as appeal to me as much as this earlier sort of stuff. This is just drum machine stuff beyond human capabilities, which I always love. I think it's actually 2 drum machines at once, possibly, something ridiculous like that. This is just short, sharp, really riffy, killer stuff. Song House of Feasting was always a winner for me. It's just heavy as hell. It was a combination, or it was a toss-up between this and Frozen Corpse Stuffed with Dope, mainly because that album has like those weird phone call songs and Danny Loca singing Hang the Pope, but this one's just a bit more concise, and I mean, look at that cover art. Awesome stuff. Yeah, as good as it gets for crazy drum machine grind. Number 10 is Pan-Thy-Monium with Chaos and Confusion. This is their third sort of proper album. They're a very weird Swedish death metal band from Dan Swano and other members of Edge of Sanity. Very quirky stuff. Their earlier albums are some of my favourites, as is this really. It's all pretty bloody similar. It's just very quirky death metal with, super heavy Swano level, tough riffs. And it was obviously, I think their early days, they always tried for like Bolt Thrower level of heaviness. But then there's just weird solos and saxophone solos and all sorts of crazy shit going on. This one even has a panpipe solo on it. Like, it's ridiculous. This is essentially just 2 really long songs with lots of weird bits in them, and then I think a keyboard song for a couple of minutes, and then a minute of silence. That's the very end of it. Swano did actually do this Carabugian EP later in pretty much the same sort of style, but not quite the same. I don't think that it's instrumental, because I don't think the vocalist that they used was there. But yeah, Pan-Thy, it's definitely one of my favourites. Just craziness. As I said, I've always loved crazy bands. Probably comes from seeing Alchemist live so many times. But yeah, Pan-Thy-Monium are definitely up there as one of my favourite Swedish metal bands by a long shot. Alright, we're getting low. Up next is Suffocation with Human Waste. I don't really need to say a huge amount about this, really. This is their first release other than their demo. Brutal stuff. The sound is pretty shit house, really, especially compared to later stuff. But yeah, the songs are just intense. As you know, Suffocation, one of the probably most famous of the brutal death metal bands, but yeah, this is even more brutal than some of their later stuff. One of the highlights for me is always Frank Mullen and his cupped vocals, which just sound even more demonic on this than the later stuff. And I mean, look at that cover art. That's just pure death metal, killer stuff. I don't really need to say anything else. It's Suffo. Number 8 is Alchemist with Organism. Might be a bit biased here because I did see this band for live a hell of a lot, and I kind of know them. But no, this is their first Relapse album, and bloody killer stuff. Great production. On here, there's there's a 3-part trilogy that's probably my favourite part of it. Second song's just this awesome, slide, high-pitched stuff that I remember once when I think they played this a few times live in its entirety, and it just worked perfectly. It was killer. Drummer Rod's probably at his tribal sort of best on here. Johnny's bass sounds snarly as hell. I think Adam's clean vocals are a bit nicer on this than earlier ones. He obviously worked on it well. Sounds really good on Single Sided. I think Surreality is probably one of my favourite songs on here. They used to kick ass live as well. Amusingly, I remember when this first came out and Roy brought it over to play us, and I noticed a few typos that he wasn't very happy about. But anyway, yeah, killer stuff. Always worth checking out, Alchemist. Number 7 is Hemdale with Rad Jackson. This one's completely cheating. This is a compilation of stuff that Relapse put out. All the stuff had been released on a label other than Relapse. But yeah, I just want to thank Relapse for putting it all out on one nice CD. Hemdale are a super heavy, sort of death grind kind of band. It's kind of craze style, and maybe you could sort of get a bit of Impetigo from it, that sort of stuff. Just had super heavy deep bits and really deep growls, but just manic screams over the top from bass player Matt. Yeah, it's insane sort of stuff. It's just thick as hell. The Exhumed, this is made up of a couple of 7 inches in a split album they did with the Exhumed, and the Exhumed stuff sounds, their stuff from the Exhumed split sounds the best by miles. It's just thick as hell. It's got covers of Napalm Death and Grave, which are pretty good, but it's also got a cover of Destruction of Curse the Gods, which is an odd thing for a death grind sort of band to play, but works super well. I was really surprised. They split in the 90s, and they're kind of, they reappeared, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, put out a couple of splits. I haven't heard much since, so I'm not sure if they're still going. I was supposed to see them at 1MDF, but I think they pulled out, which was a bit of a shame. I think Matt went on to do Accept Death as well, which was just a sludge sort of band, heavy as hell. Not quite as manic in his vocal style, but still bloody intense. This is, we used to play this on the radio all the time. There's a couple of songs that have samples from... and just if you're wondering, it's from a movie called Confessions of a Serial Killer. It's a movie about, what's his name? One of those American serial killers. But yeah, that's where the Are You Pornophoric sample about magazines is from. It's, gold stuff. Amazing band. Super heavy. Definitely worth checking out. And I mean, look at this cover art. I'll put up the inner pictures as well. Just ridiculous. Zombies with kittens and puppies, and obviously not the most serious of bands, but yeah, seriously heavy. Well worth it. Number 6 is Human Remains with Using Sickness as a Hero. This is an EP from I think New Jersey band that were very weird, quirky sort of death metal stuff. They're around for a while, but this is their only sort of... they did a few 7-inches as well, but this is pretty much their only sort of EP, proper version. This is just, weird stuff. It's got Dave Witt from Discordance Axis and a million other bands on drums, kicking ass, but I think the highlight really is this weird guitar style that they use. I think it's a volume control or something or other, but it just makes it this weird choppy sort of sound that, hopefully I've picked a decent sample for the start of this that you'll know what the hell I'm talking about. Road is probably a favourite on this, but all the songs are all really. It's got an awesome snarly sort of bass. They used to play a lot around in New Jersey, New York sort of area, so I'd see them on flyers, and it was always a weird thing because they're a very strange sort of band and playing with a bit more serious sort of bands. So it's got cool samples. I think there's I'm not sure if it's a sample out of Romper Stomper or something, but it's definitely got a Brain Dead sample, so can't go wrong there. Just weird sort of stuff, but it's highly addictive. And as you can see, I'm kind of a fan. I will mention that they also put out this Where Were You When compilation. I'm not sure if Relapse put it out or someone else, but it's pretty much all their stuff. It's all the 7-inches, this sort of album EP, and demo versions as well. It's definitely worth tracking down. So Human Remains, bloody awesome. Number 5 is Regurgitate with Hate-Filled Vengeance. This was a tricky choice because I love all Regurgitate. It's one of my favourite bands and could have given me the chance to put up this charming artwork, but anyway. This album is pretty much, I think it's sort of half and half of old songs re-recorded with much better sound and newer songs as well. I don't know, it's just peak sort of era for me. It's Pitch Shifter sounds the best. And it's got like Vulva Fermentation, is one of my favourite old songs redone. So as much as I love the first album, Effortless, blah blah blah, this I kind of prefer the better production on this stuff. And I'm very sad they split up. They always got compared to Carcass, but really I didn't really see much of it. I think they got their own sort of style. It's very, very noticeable. Pretty regularly when I'm listening to grind bands, I'll just go, hey, that's a Regurgitate song. What the hell? And sure enough, it is. So they got their own sound. I was very lucky to see these guys live at 1MDF. They were incredible. I think it was the first one I went to in 2007. They played straight after General Surgery, who just completely blown me away. And for a while, I was like, this is pretty good. And then I realised, no, this is Regurgitate. This is bloody awesome. And quickly got over how good General Surgery were, and Regurgitate were just as good. So, killer band. I'd recommend checking any of their stuff out, really. Can't go wrong there. So, this is one of my bands. I'm kind of hoping that, I'm a bit over reunion stuff, but if anyone's going to do it, Regurgitate, go for it. It'll be fine by me. Number 3 was an impossible choice, so you're going to get both. Amorphis Privilege of Evil and Amorphis Tales of a Thousand Lakes. We'll start with Privilege of Evil, which is their first EP. It's got several songs from the Abhorrence days when they sounded pretty much exactly the same as this. It's just pure Finnish death metal, great melodies, heavy as hell, deep vocals. Perfect sound. I think that's pretty much one of my quintessential finished death metal EPs. I prefer a number of these songs were re-recorded for the first album, the Corellian, whatever the hell that is, but I prefer these rawer versions here. Was it Misery Path? Has a slightly newer sort of style to it, but yeah, heavy as hell. Yeah, intense stuff. After this was, yeah, the Corellian EP or album never quite blew me away, but I think Tales of the Thousand Lakes certainly did. I remember I actually got this on tape. Someone taped it for me. I can't remember who, but it wasn't labelled, so it took me quite a while in the pre-internet days where I couldn't just play it into an app which would recognise it. I just had no idea what it was, so eventually I just went through the metal section of Impact Records and kept looking at album covers until I found some recognisable song titles, which I think Black Winter Day was pretty useful for that. So I finally worked out what the hell it was. I was very happy with that. But yeah, this is their, obviously much folkier sort of style, but still heavy as hell death metal stuff. I think, what is it? Highlights are definitely Drown Maid and Into Hiding, but every song's really good. Except, do not get the real, I think it's a Nuclear Blast version that has a Doors cover of Light My Fire. Yeah, don't check that out. It's bloody awful. We used to open our radio show with the intro song Thousand Lakes on this, and later on we used it very effectively for the wedding that I had with my dear wife. She walked into Thousand Lakes because she always loved that music so much from listening to me do the radio show. And yeah, so that song holds a even more special part in my heart. So yeah, just amazing album. And look at that cover art, killer stuff. Number 3 is Mortician with Zombie Apocalypse. No way that Mortician weren't going to be on this list, that's for sure. It was a real toss-up between this and House by the Cemetery and Hacked Up for Barbecue, but this one wins mainly for the title track and for the Hell on Earth, because there's so many Hellraiser samples on it. Strangely, this is the exact same format as House by the Cemetery, or the CD version at any rate. It's got like 5 normal songs with good production, and then like a couple of covers with shit production, and then a further EP with the similar shit production. It's strangely exact same format, but it works for me. Best song on this is definitely the title track, Zombie Apocalypse, which is one of their slower but just super heavy songs. Works so perfectly with a Dawn of the Dead sample as well, about, the dead will walk the earth. I know, this is ridiculously heavy stuff, Mortician. You really can't go wrong with any of their albums, to tell the truth, but this one really made its mark on me. Other songs on it are Slaughterhouse. It's just got the awesome sample about someone with his cleaver, and then classic sort of polka blast combo. I got very lucky to see them live at MDF a couple of years ago, and they played, sure enough, Zombie Apocalypse, unsurprisingly, as well as Blown to Pieces, which is probably my favourite Mortician song. Super heavy, great cover art, just, yeah, can't go wrong. Perfect stuff. Number 2 is Neurosis with Through Silver in Blood. Yes, there's no way this wasn't going to be on the list. This is their Relapse debut, but probably about their, 4th or 5th album, and I reckon their most intense by a mile. Times of Grace, the album after this, is pretty killer, but I don't know, there's something extra about this one. Very intense and cathartic. It's, just with their later stuff, I always find that they always sound like they're building to a climax, but don't quite get there. But on this album, they sure as hell do. It's got intense tribal drumming on the title track and Purify as well. My favourite song is most likely Locust Star, partly just for how intense it is, but also for that classic footage of them from, I think it's from Ozfest or something or other, where yeah, they're pretty intense live, those chaps, and yeah, from all the footage from around there that I've seen, they put their all in, that's for sure. But this album is just, I don't know, it's got great sort of industrial, sort of weird soundscapey bits in it as well. But yeah, just heavy stuff. I've been lucky. I've seen these guys a number of times, including one at MDF where they had to wait for ages because there'd been a massive storm. They weren't very happy because I think there was like water all over the stage and the keyboardist could have died or something. But anyway. But yeah, one time after I saw them in Sydney, with our intense as always, I was driving through the next day, actually listening to this album just for the hell of it, probably hoarse from yelling at mates over the top of the music all night. And I actually saw the bass player Dave wandering around Newtown, so I tried to yell out to him as I was driving past, but yeah, I don't think he heard me, or he just chose not to acknowledge me. But I think I was probably a bit hoarse to make a decent sound anyway. But yeah, intense stuff, and yeah, one of my all-time favourites. Can never get enough Neurosis. So, number 1, unsurprisingly, Disembowelment, Transcendence into the Peripheral. This probably wasn't a surprise to anyone who's seen my earlier videos, and I won't ramble on too much about this, but check out my top 20 Aussie albums video, which I'll put a link to, because, yeah, I talk a lot more about it there. This is, ridiculously awesome album. I never get sick of it. Listen to it all the time. I even have this version, which is, I think, a Roadburn exclusive or something or other that they put out. I'm pretty sure I bought this one night at an MDF after a few too many beers, possibly, because I think I looked at it the next day and went, why did I just buy that? I've already got this on record. But, what the hell. I also have an old box set that I put out of the same record, and I think it's also got Dusk and the other stuff on it as well. So, yeah, I like this band a lot. So, but yeah, it's just a magical mix of super heavy stuff and weird ethereal atmospheric sort of stuff. To me, it's just one of those albums that's a lot more than a sum of its parts. There's just something mystical about it. It's, still brutal, heavy death metal sort of stuff, but yeah, it's just something about it. So yeah, that's my number 1 Relapse one. Probably should have started recording this a little earlier in the day because it's now a bit dark, so hopefully you can still see me. So yeah, that was my top 30. As you notice, there's a ton of great bands missing from there. There's no Pig Destroyer or High on Fire or Zombie or, I don't know, Dillinger Escape Plans, Phallic Carnage, Brutal Truth. There's a Morgion very nearly got in with their sort of quality Death Doom and Mind Rot. Heaps of great bands they put out over the years. And I mean, as I said, I'm pleased they're still putting out new, different sort of music. They've got great bands on the roster now. They've now got Wolves in the Throne Room, but they've got Torch, who I really enjoy. I only just discovered Author Punisher the other day and was very impressed by that, so they're kicking ass. I've just ordered I think it's Temple of Void album, so hopefully that'll get here soon. So yeah, they're still putting out the great work, so thank you, Relapse. I appreciate all your hard work over the years. Great label. And thanks for watching. Cheers.